So we have been in an exploration of the broad themes of Advent, and today we are in our third week, and we're looking at the theme of joy, of the overflowing heart, joy of the overflowing heart. I shared with you some quotes and writings of some of our New Thought leaders pointing to joy as really being something that is very much connected with our inner life experience, very much connected with our spirit, with our soul, and very much a natural emanation, I think, of who and what we are. When I think of joy, I get a variety of images in mind, but a couple of them that I get in mind involve children. I think of a baby's laugh, that belly laugh when maybe you've tickled them or just something has happened where they're just laughing, that wonderful, deep belly laugh. And you just look at that and hear that. And I think it's one of the most joyful, beautiful sounds, right? And it's almost an invitation to us to vibrate at a similar level. Or I think about toddlers who, maybe are out for a walk and suddenly they spot something that they haven't ever really seen before, and they just burst into laughter and this emanation of joy, of pure bliss, something that has just touched them. And I think about it in terms of it, touching what's very natural within us. I think we come into life with joy being a very natural emotion that we have, a very natural feeling, pure, unadulterated, a spontaneous response to just being alive, In psychology, when you look at human beings and you look at what makes us tick and what we share in common, it's understood that joy is a very basic, fundamental emotion that we all have. We might lose it somewhere along life's journey, not so much lose it, but it might be covered over with the heaviness and challenges or responsibilities that we might feel. And yet it is a very natural state of our being. It's why I think it can be so quickly triggered or evoked in a child, in a baby. We have studies now of the psychology of joy and how it impacts the chemistry of the brain, that there are certain transmitters, neurotransmitters, certain qualities, whether it's serotonin or dopamine, that are released when we feel this spontaneous joy, that joy that bubbles up from inside of us, and how beneficial it is to us. Not just that it feels good, but it's actually beneficial to us physically, physiologically. That there's a difference, I think, between joy and happiness. Do you think there's a subtle difference between the two? I think there's a definite difference between the two. I think of joy as a state of being that really comes from within. And if I were to try to kind of have a visual of the difference, I'm going to paint a little bit of an analogy here. To me, happiness is kind of like a puddle. Think about, it raining and there's a little puddle, and that puddle exists until it gets warm outside and the water evaporates, and then it's gone. It can come and then it goes. It can come and then it goes, just like happiness can come and then it goes, comes and then it goes. Whereas joy, to me, is much more like a spring, an ever-fed spring that bubbles up from inside, that isn't dependent upon, it can be triggered by, but it's not dependent upon external circumstances, because it's a natural quality that we have, an inborn state of being. one of the things that it's important for us to realize and appreciate is that it can change over the course of time. Some people exude joy in a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Much bigger way than others. Some people exude joy in a very quiet and subtle way. There's I was going to say a young girl. She's not a young girl anymore. She's a middle-aged woman, but she's younger than I am. I used to babysit her. Her name is, I'll just give you her first name, Sharon. All the years I have known Sharon, all the years I have known her, from when she was a little girl and I babysat her until just recently reconnecting with her. She is one of the most joyful people I have ever met. Here is a woman who is working so hard to make ends meet. Here is a woman who helps to care for her mother, who's in her mid-90s, who watches 6 children a day, little kiddos. And I've seen her at the end of the day, and her joy, and it's not fake. It's this natural state that just bubbles up. To be in her midst is an invitation to touch that same quality within us. I feel joy. Mine doesn't quite look as delicious as I think Sharon's does, but yet it's a natural state for us, and one that I think we come into expression in a clearer way the more we are on a spiritual path. I think the more we are on a spiritual path, the more we come to understand who and what we are spiritually, the more our own natural, unique expression of joy bubbles up from within and outward and blesses us. Would you not say that the state of joy feels good? Yeah, feels wonderfully good. And sometimes it comes up without anything external that seems to have triggered it. Just the pure act of being alive. The pure act of being alive. And so I think it's a different experience than happiness. I think happiness can come and go and is much more an external experience, whereas joy is much more an internal. I think it's very much like Marianne Williamson had said. Happiness depends on circumstances. Joy depends on the soul. And I think that's why as we journey spiritually, as we attempt to learn spiritual principles and we attempt to practice them in our lives, we come into our own experience of joy that is more steady and consistent. As I was working on this lesson, I was reminded of the movie Inside Out. How many of you have seen the movie Inside Out? If you have not seen the movie, I think it might be on Netflix or somewhere out there. It came out in 2015, so you might have to poke around a little bit for it. But it's a very joyful movie. It's a children's movie, but it's not a children's movie. It takes place in the mind of Riley, who's an 11-year-old girl whose emotions are personified by 5 characters. Her emotions are personified by 5 characters, and they're led by the character joy. The 5 characters are joy, sadness, fear, anger, and distrust. And you may recall that joy is the leader, and joy is the first character, the first one to appear in Riley's life. And then Riley's circumstances change. Her family moves to San Francisco, and her world as she knew it falls apart, and joy and sadness are emotions that are thrown out of the picture, and she's just left. And along with joy and sadness being thrown out of the picture, she loses all her important core memories, and she's just left with anger and fear and disgust. And joy is trying to work its way back into little Riley's life. I need to get some water. Hang on. Take a deep breath in. Go ahead. Usually I have some water up here.
It's on Disney Plus.
Say again?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, thank you. See, she already found it. It's on Disney Plus. So watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a really delightful movie. But anyway, Joy is trying to come back into the picture, and Joy thinks it needs to get rid of sadness in order to keep Riley completely happy. And eventually, of course, it realizes that those two emotions actually complement each other. That it's very, very hard in a way as we become older to feel joy if we have not always come to terms with sadness. Does that make sense? And that it's really in the light of how we deal with sadness, the losses in our lives, the disappointments in our lives, that then we come back into union with and understanding with that very innate state of joy, that they're complementary. And so I want to share with you just some very simple foundational habits to help brighten your experience of joy, especially at this season, to brighten your experience of joy. And these 5 habits are not things you have not heard before. If you have been in this teaching for any length of time, you've heard it all before. But that's not the point, because the you that heard it last time is not the you that's hearing it this time. Does that make sense? That's why, when Jesus taught in parables, one of the powerful things I think that happened in his teaching in parables is he recognized that people would remember the story. And they would remember the story no matter where they were in their life experience. So he may give a parable in one sense, in one way that meant something to the listener because of where they were in their life experience. And then years later, they would remember that same parable, and suddenly it took on a different meaning. The same is true for us. That's why we can read a spiritual book again and again and find that we are coming to terms with something different. It was in the book all along, but it wasn't in you all along. Does that make sense? And so these 5 habits, you know them, but perhaps this morning you'll hear them in a slightly different way, or one will just grab your attention as a thing to really focus in on to help elevate and deepen your experience of joy. And so the first one, super simple, is a practice of gratitude. It is one of the clearest ways to amplify the experience, the feeling of joy. The simple act of deliberately calling to mind things that you are grateful for. To write them down, and perhaps even more than that, to build into your life a practice of sharing your gratitude with another person each day. 3 things that you are grateful for, to share them. If you live with another person, put into practice at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, 3 things that you're grateful for. Verbalize it. There's something to be said when we verbalize something in addition to calling it to mind and in addition to writing it down. And so why does it help? It helps to refocus our brain's energy. We tend to have hardwired to us a negativity bias or a fear bias where we are aware of what's missing or broken or what's scary. There's a biological reason for that. Self-preservation. Back in the days when lions were chasing people, there was a reason for it. But it's not as necessary today, this negativity bias. And so the simple practice, deliberate, consistent practice of I'm going to name 3 things I'm grateful for, and I'm going to share them with somebody. Stop for just a moment. I'm not going to ask you to do it in the room, but I am going to ask you to stop for a moment. 1, 2, 3. Think of 3 things you're grateful for. 1, 2, 3. Everybody got 3 things you're grateful for? I challenge you to share them specifically with somebody today. You can do it in the cafe, you can call up a friend, you can share it with the person that you came to church with today. So gratitude as a habit to increase your sense of joy. The second is an investment in your relationships. And I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking about time. I'm talking about time. investing in your friendships and in your relationships, especially spending time. I don't know what I'm doing with my throat this morning. Especially spending time with people that are joyful, people that are alive, people that are happy. To invest in your relationships, spend time there. Put the phone away. Put the phone away. Avoid, if you can, only connecting via screen time. Make time to be together with one another. The early church wasn't called a church. The early followers of Jesus met together in person. Now, they didn't have other ways of meeting, right? They didn't have what we have today. But they met together in small groups. They connected person to person. There is something that happens when we are in the presence of another that we just don't get when we're on the other side of a screen. Does that make sense? There's a measurable difference. Strong social ties are one of the most reliable predictors of long-term happiness. It works, again, because beneficial hormones are released when we are together. Jesus said, where two or more, we believe he said, it's attributed to him as saying, where two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Meaning that when two or more gathered in similar consciousness, in consciousness of God or in consciousness of the divine, there would be an amplification of the energy because the two or more have joined together. It's the same thing that happens when we meditate together. Meditating alone is wonderful, and meditating together or being in practice together, such as we do in this room, such as maybe you feel online, I don't know, is powerful and it's important. It feeds our soul and it adds to the experience of joy. The third is the practice of being kind and being of service. The practice of being kind and being of service. Have you noticed that maybe I just see this, that there seems to be a tendency at this time of year for people to be in such a hurry and such a rush and such a mission to get from point A to point B, to get done whatever needs to get done, that kindness seems to go way down. Anybody else notice that? No? Maybe it's just the world I'm living in, I don't know, but it seems to me that their focus is so much on accomplishment, on getting stuff done. And I know that there's a lot to do. But my heart aches when I think that we put that over the simple act of really practicing being kind with one another. It really doesn't take all that long. To be kind requires that we keep our eyes open. You know, we're in the parking lot and we see someone struggling to put something in their car. We offer to help. We go that extra step when we put our shopping cart away instead of leaving it out in the parking lot to crash into somebody else's car. We practice ultimate kindness as we're driving. We let every nincompoop cut ahead of us. We do not give them a less than supportive hand gesture. We smile at them. If only to say, I'm practicing. And sometimes we might feel like we're doing it through gritted teeth, but eventually it won't be through gritted teeth. Eventually it will be through a smile. The Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. My religion is kindness. Be kind. It rewires some of our brain. Be kind. The fourth is to savor positive moments. Say that with me. Savor positive moments. I like the word savor. It's a word that I think is rich. To savor. When I say the word savor, what do you think of? I think of food too. I think of food too. Of savoring. What does it mean when you're savoring a delicious meal? You're really enjoying it, and to enjoy it, what are some of the things you're probably doing? You're probably slowing down a bit, right? You're probably much more mindful. Have you ever eaten a meal so fast, so quickly, that you hardly even tasted it? Right? That's at the opposite end of this idea of savoring the deliciousness of a meal, noticing how it looks, the texture of it, the flavor of it, so forth. But savoring positive moments is the same kind of practice. It's to pause long enough to recognize the moment before it's passed, to really take it in. Sometimes we never realize how important a moment was until it has passed, and then how we wish we could have savored it. I think, and Emery, I'm thinking of you as I'm thinking of your wedding. I think of the many, many weddings I have done over the years. And one of the things that when I perform a marriage ceremony that is so important to me is to really be there with the bride and the groom, or the bride and bride and the groom, and to say to them, when you come up before me, I want you to put everything related to all the plans, and sometimes the weddings are big and fancy and beautiful and lavish and just amazing. I want you to put all that aside. I don't want you to think about that. I don't want you to think about the people that are sitting watching you. I want you to savor this moment and really be here in this moment and not wait to remember it when you look through your wedding album. It means to be fully present. Is that not one of the premier practices in our spiritual approach to life? Is to be mindful. We can't savor something. We can't savor a meal. We can't savor a moment if we are not fully present right there in that moment. And in that savoring of those moments, I think we tickle the joy muscle, if you will. When you think of a baby or a toddler in that delightful giggle and laugh, they are fully present in whatever it is that is going on as they are experiencing that thing. That's to be alive. That's to be alive. Can I have an amen to that? Yeah, so savor the positive moments. It intensifies it and it prolongs it. And then the last is expressing the joy that you feel. Now, when I express joy, it's nothing like my dear friend Sharon. I wish that mine came out that way. It just doesn't. It's not how I'm hardwired. But that doesn't mean that I can't still be a joyful presence in a way that helps to inspire others, to let that joy ripple out. It's a vibrational frequency. Have you ever watched a dialogue between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu? If you haven't, here's another assignment. If you watch the two of them, two tremendous spiritual leaders, with when you think about what they have dealt with socially and politically, with the world on their shoulders, and yet you see the two of them together, and they can burst forth in this absolute infectious joy. Why? Has the outer conditions of their life changed? No, but what is true about both of them is they are deeply connected in their soul. They know, in my words here, they know who and what they are as spiritual beings. When you and I really remember who and what we are as spiritual beings, we will touch a similar experience of joy and reap the benefits of joy. I could see a doctor actually writing a prescription out, saying, I prescribe to you a daily dose of joy 3 times a day. Take it and your condition will be so much better. I can promise you this, it won't be any worse. It won't be any worse. It won't be any worse. So circling back on this idea of joy as an emanation of the soul on fire, joy as an expression of our understanding of who and what we are as divine beings. It is a natural inner state. There are things, habits we can practice, such as gratitude, such as investing in our relationships, making a commitment to up-level our kindness out in the real world, being of service, savoring those positive moments, and the letting whatever joy we are feeling ripple out to do some good work beyond where we are. Namaste.